Hi friends, welcome to IAS Baba's Public Administration Daily Answer Writing Program, and you are writing pretty good answers. And here is the third lecture and the discussion of last week's answers regarding that. And this week we will discuss about the paper compatibility of the answers. That is, how could you bring the content of paper 1 to paper 2 and paper 2 to paper 1. Many toppers they speak of this, but how is a question here? See here the questions are of various types, friends. In the first paper, when it comes to the questions regarding administrative theories, maybe classical theories, behavioral theories, whatever, here the best way to bring the content from paper 2 is that you write the contemporary relevance. Like now, if there are any leadership related questions, bring some of the examples of leaders from Indian public administration and also the leaders from the current affairs. Okay, and if there are any things like discipline issues or maybe scalar chain issues, you can always bring in elements from Indian public administration and link here, and also you can bring case studies as well here. And coming to second type of questions in paper 1, especially in the chapter of control and accountability and personal management, here most of the people they write only the examples from paper 2, and paper 1 will not be present anywhere here, and the answer seems to be borrowed from paper 2 directly. Hence, to maintain the paper specificity here, for the control and accountability part, bring in the international best practices, or maybe you bring in any examples from private organizations, maybe how a Google company or an Accenture company or any Infosys or any other companies, how they maintain the control and accountability and how their personal management is, how they train their personnel, etc. And then coming to the paper 2 here. Paper 2, almost all the questions they are related to the Indian public administration, and here the best part is in the introduction part. Like consider a question where DC is a manager as a leader comment. Here better that you bring the management and leadership of first paper soon after your introduction. Okay, and then coming to the body, here you can always bring thinkers, quotes and keywords from the paper 1, and friends don't forget to bring them, else your compatibility of answers between paper 1 and paper 2 misses out. Okay, this is how you have to manage, and make sure that you adopt this and you will have a paper consciousness validating the answers. And now coming to your answers on the day-to-day basis, the day 9. Here the first question was, even though it appears to overlook the state governments on the face of it, TIDE grant is actually helping them. Here you have to specifically explain and with precision you have to define what is a TIDE grant, and later you have to explain how it overlooks the state government, at the same time how it actually helps them. Here most of you have written how it actually helps them, but you have forgot this, and only half of the marks you will get, and as the answer becomes half analyzed. So make sure that this happens and go through the FC reports so that the TIDE grants and untied grants, then discretionary grants, all those things will be thorough in your brain. Coming to the second one, the chief secretary part. Here the intent of asking the question was to instill that knowledge of chief secretaries, like at least you by heart 3 to 4 best chief secretaries or those chief secretaries who are in news, and make sure that you bring it to the answer whenever the questions are asked. And mind friends, when you by heart these chief secretaries, you can also bring in 4 to 5 answers, like maybe bureaucracy, civil service, leadership, motivation, manager, everywhere. So just go through the names of those chief secretaries when you come across in the daily newspapers. Now coming to the day 10. Here the question was, development administration is impossible without transparency. In these two questions, even the media hyperactivism hurts citizen-centric administration. Here, to answer these questions at the best possible efforts, you have to know some of the keywords that are synonymous to development administration and citizen-centric administration. And the only thing is that link those keywords to the transparency and here link these keywords to the media hyperactivism. For example, development administration is action oriented, goal oriented, it's a social change oriented, it's responsive, etc. See how transparency becomes action oriented, because whenever the policies are transparent, people they get to know the deadlines of the policies, the effectiveness of the policies, and thus transparency it forces the government to take the action. And the same as the goal is also same as action here. And then coming to the social change, if the development administration has to bring the social change, the academia, intelligentsia, and other enlightened citizenry, they should know about the policies, they have to discuss well, and then they can bring it. Okay, and then responsive, only if the policies are responsible, the administration can get the feedback from the people, and that feedback allows the administration to respond. And here transparency is a must to bring in the responsibility, because once the people have to get to know, or the administration has to get to know about the lower level implementation, they have to be transparent. Opaqueness will not work here. And coming to the next one, here as well, transparency is a citizen centric administration. Okay, and then social justice is also a citizen centric administration, and feedback from the citizens is also a matter of citizen centric administration. Here once again, now start linking it to media hyperactivism here. Here the feedbacks, if the feedbacks are not proper, if media goes with the sensationalism and provides only the critics, then it hurts the citizen centric administration. Then coming to the social justice, if media goes with the media trials, then with the hyperactive sting operations, then the social justice becomes lopsided, and maybe only the people who are having money power, muscle power, who are able to pay the media, only they'll get the justice, not the common man here. Okay, this way you have to analyze, and for this, for every concept, make sure that you by heart 3 to 4 keywords here, and that is the best way you can tackle such questions. Now coming to day 11. Day 11, the question was the advent of local self-government, the power, the jurisdiction of collector has diminished. Do you agree in this context has the district as a basic unit of governance become irrelevant? Here the best approach is that here you have attended the first part, but you have faltered in the second part. Even in the second part, you go on to say about the district collector himself. Here the second part is purely about the district, friends. You have to comment only on the district here, how taluks or maybe tehsils are encroaching with the district, how villages are encroaching with the districts, how metropolitan cities they have encroached the districts, maybe like the national capital region, the greater Noida, all those districts they are encroaching into the Delhi. Such things you have to explain, not just the district collector here. Make sure that your answers are to the utmost precision to the demand of the question. Then coming to the next one, with the help of suitable examples, explain how the district administration is a blend of generalists and specialists. Here, generalists and specialists is the office. You cannot give examples and say about generalism and specialism. Not like in the COVID-19, many health workers have worked, or maybe in the PW department, many engineers work. These are not the answers that are expected in the public administration answer. You have to provide the office. Like in the PWD department, the district subdivision, the executive engineer, then the district health officer of the district, then the district education officer, or the district director of public instructions. Such precise specialists and generalists. And when it comes to generalists, CEO, the DC, then DRDA, the district rural development authority officer, DUDA, urban development authority officer, all these you can mention for the generalists. Okay friend, make sure that while writing public administration answers, you know the officers very well, and you know the ground realities, how they work, and that is the utmost importance. Hence your answer becomes a polity answer here. Now coming to day 12. Day 12, the question was the beneficial effect of executive intervention, especially in the form of legislation, is direct, immediate, and visible, while the evil effects are gradual, indirect, and out of sight. Here, you need to provide effective information for all these 6 keywords. Most of you have written just the positives and negatives of delegated legislation, which becomes an half analyzed answer, and maybe you get just 1/3 of the marks. You have to explain how delegated legislations are direct, that is, the knowledge of bureaucrats are applied directly to the people rather than going to the parliamentarians and then coming back to the people. It is very direct. And how it's immediate, rather than taking a long process of legislation like enacting a law, etc. Delegated legislation directly comes from the secretariat to the gazette and it comes to the implementation directly. So it's immediate. Then how it's visible? The change is very much visible when compared to any laws. This way you have to explain all these keywords, else just provision of points will not suffice, and that is not the standard of UPSC style of answering here. And coming to the next one, administrative tribunals. Administrative tribunals are orphans in judiciary's foster care homes. Some of you have written these analysis like there are other orphans as well under judiciary like Gram Nyayalayas and industrial courts, or maybe municipal courts, district courts, judicial magistrates, all those things. Now, these are not the foster children. These are not in the foster houses of judiciary, friends. These are the judiciary's own children and they lie in the very judiciary's home. But administrative tribunal or any other tribunals for that matter, they are treated as a foster children and they are being persecuted and subjugated by judiciary more often than not. And that persecution should be explained in this answer, else your analysis goes out of the track. And make sure that, friends, any analysis for that matter, UPSC evaluates only on the basis of the answer key that they have present. Even if the analysis is correct on your perspective, then even then you won't get the marks if your perspective deviates from that of UPSC. So make sure that you will understand the question and then go with the answer with a precise analysis and with the best answer. Okay, then coming to the day 13. Day 13, the first question was between the code of ethics and code of conduct. The intent behind this question was that you have to go through the code of ethics and code of conduct briefly and make sure that at least you by heart 7 to 8 codes in both the cases, like 7 code of ethics and 7 code of conducts. Vague words like integrity, objectivity, etc. will not work here. You have to precisely mention the code of ethics there with the examples. And code of conduct, most of you have mentioned only one thing, that the gifts, the late night parties, etc. Over and above that, there are code of conducts for maintaining confidentiality, seeking written orders, documenting any decisions taken in the conflict of interest, all those things. So you should have knowledge there. That is why the question was asked. And here, to bring the paper compatibility, you can mention code of ethics and code of conducts of other nations, code of ethics and code of conducts of private organizations in 1 or 2 examples. Then coming to the last question, the staff association. The UPSC is concentrating on those terms in the syllabus which are usually not explained in any reference books, or maybe they are less explained by the coaching centers. So it is the onus of you to go through every topic in the syllabus and make sure that you are able to answer at least 200 to 250 words for every keywords present in the syllabus, and you have to prepare that way while going to the mains. And coming to the last part, friends, most of you have been mailing me, messaging me saying that whether we should read this, whether we should read that, etc. But the thing is that civil service is nothing but reading the newspapers and learning about India. Make sure that more and more you prepare regarding civil service, you learn more and more regarding your nation and nothing else. And make sure that you prepare not only for the sake of you but also for the sake of nation. Friends, take a look at these pictures. These are the people who are doing their last journeys, and here many leaders, they went in the last journey with the masses, thousands of masses, they gathered and they gave a grand farewell for them because they dedicated their whole life for the sake of the nation. And it's disheartening to know that our generation is unable to spend at least 5 to 6 years at least studying for the UPSC. Hence, friends, cost and benefit analysis doesn't occur well in the UPSC preparation. So study as much as you can, learn as much as you can, study happily, don't study hard. And remember these great leaders who dedicated for the sake of nation. Their life was no less than the life of the heroes, and their last journey is no less than the procession of the gods. And they are truly the godly peoples lived and departed from this earth. So better to live like them rather than just living a meager life. All the best, friends. All the best for your exam. All the best for the preparation. Namaskar.